Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, romantics. I'm here with New York Times bestselling author Allison Brennan to talk about her new romantic mystery, Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. What a wonderful book. It's just a slight deviation from some of your recent novels, but I felt like you had a lot of fun writing this book. Am I right?
Oh, it was so much fun. I
Yeah.
and I didn't really expect it to be as much fun as it was. They asked me to write, so maybe it's like my first 12 books were romantic suspense, but they were very dark romantic suspense,
Yeah.
very a lot of violence, a lot of things going on, a lot of uh character
Death
trauma
and
and things like
dismemberment.
that. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on. And then they said, well, why don't you write a romantic mystery? And I'm like thinking, okay. And I could, they said, we're thinking summer and da da da. I said, okay, I can do that. Maybe, it's like, but as I was telling my agent, I said, okay, I want to try something different because you never want to get in a rut where you're thinking you're just always doing the same thing. And so I said, okay, I want to do this. I want to really try because to me it was challenging. And as soon as I got into it, I was like going, oh my gosh, this is so much fun because I could
Yeah.
play around with things that I don't really do in my other series. And I wrote in first person, which I've never done before. And it was just a different, and Mia has some issues from her backstory, but it's like, well, no, she wasn't brutalized, she wasn't abused. I mean,
Right.
she doesn't have the really dark backstory. She just has a real authentic, um, what I think a lot of people can relate to kind of
Yeah.
background. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is fun. This is
Yeah.
definitely fun to do.
Yeah, it seemed like I'm thinking about it from the author perspective. It seemed like it would be a nice palate cleanser because your books do have a lot of, the crime and, the suspensey and the thrillery aspects. And you have a mystery in here, and there is, some of that, but it's a much lighter tone. And just like you said, it's a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I sensed that you probably did have a lot of fun. Did I read in I think it was maybe the acknowledgments that your daughter Mary came up with the title Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds? Yeah.
Yep, because the working title was Beach Reads, but as you know, there is a very, very famous book by that title, and the I actually started this project before that book came out, but it was like really in the just beginning stages because this I kind of wrote this book on spec, meaning I wasn't really I wasn't contracted to write it
Yeah.
when I wrote the beginning at least. So it took me a lot longer to write it because I had all these other books to write in between, which is actually also the same way my very first standalone North of Nowhere, I did that same thing. I kind of wrote it in between other projects. So I couldn't use beach reads. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? So my editor was throwing out these ideas and I didn't like any of them. And I was talking to Mary. And so I said, it has to be fun, but it also, needs to fit the genre. And we were talking about all these different things. And she just came. I think what it was is I came up with something that said deadly deeds. But it didn't sound right. And she said, well, why don't you just call it beach reads and deadly deeds? And I'm like going, oh my God, that's perfect. And everybody loved it. So
Yeah, yeah. It's a great title and the sharks, circling beneath the thumbprint, it's great. It's great.
oh yeah,
Well,
they did a really great
yeah.
job on this cover, and
Yeah, that
so I don't know if
nice.
you could
That's
see
really
it,
good. Yeah.
but
It's fun.
I loved the manuscript pages and the thumbprint, and because it is a mystery. I mean,
Hmm.
it's a romantic mystery. You have the mystery and you have a romance, and it's a lot of fun to kind of go back to the romantic suspense, but make it a little bit lighter and a little bit more fun.
Yeah, yeah, you betcha. Well, before we jump into the book too deeply, why don't you tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about yourself and your writing journey?
Oh, well, let's see. It's been almost 20 years since my first book was published. That was The Prey, and I had started. I worked full time. I had 5 kids, and I wrote every night after they went to bed. Um, in 2 years, I wrote 5 books and ended up selling my fifth book, and that was basically writing from 9 to midnight every night. Um, because obviously with kids and stuff, they go
Right,
to school. I
right.
had a job, but I gave up television. And when I sold, it took me about a year after I sold is when I quit my job because it took 2 years for the book to come out. And
Yeah,
I was really scared, but I couldn't write the other 2 books that were contracted at while working full time and having 5 young kids.
yeah.
Um,
So you
so
got a 3 book deal
I
with your
had the three
first
book deal.
contract. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And so as soon as I got paid, I took a huge leap of faith and quit my job. And I pulled my 3 youngest out of daycare thinking, okay, because they were at the time, let's see, that would have been, they were 1, 3, and 4. So I had to do some quick math there. Um, and so they were 1, 3, and 4. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom and write books, and this is going to be great. And oh my gosh, I was so exhausted at the end of the day because
Yeah,
kids take a lot of, energy. I
yeah,
mean, physical energy.
especially
Unlike
that
my
age.
work, yeah, my work was mental energy, but the books I could write after working because it was a different kind of energy. But physically, I was exhausted and wanted to go to bed when they went to bed. So 6 months later, my son, who turned 4 in May of 2005, so 6 months later, yeah, 6 months after I quit, I put him into preschool. And then my 2 little ones I put into, a friend of mine had an in-home little daycare, and I put them in there 3 days a week. And so I
Yeah,
basically wrote 3 days a week while they were in school and in daycare. And it ended up working out. It was it was interesting.
yeah,
Once they all started school full time, and everything, I was like, oh, phew, I have time.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing when I hear authors who take those, kind of leaps of faith and then how scary it is at the time, but when you look at where you are now, it's like it worked out for you, it was the right decision. Although scary at the moment, it worked out for you pretty well. So it's great.
Yeah, it was scary, but my husband had a job, so we could pay the mortgage, but I couldn't pay daycare and the mortgage and food and
Yeah.
everything. So that's why I had to pull them out. There's no reason. So, but then it ended up working out. I got a second contract, thank God. And because that was the thing, if I didn't get the second contract,
Yeah.
then I would have had to go back to work and said, okay,
Hmm.
well, 3 books, that's it. But
Yeah.
now Beach Reads is my 49th book.
49. Wow. 49 books in 20-ish years. That's amazing. Good for you. Congratulations. That's great. That's great. I mean, it really is. So, why don't you tell us, can you just give us an overview of what Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds is all about?
Um, I will try. I know my editor does a much better job at like pitching it than I do, but uh, basically, uh, Mia Crawford is a hardworking sort of accountant, financial planner, and she is very, very driven in her job. I mean, she believes, she has to work, she has to provide. Her grandmother is a free spirit. Her grandmother had her dad, doesn't know who the father is, traveled them all over the world, just loves life and loves people, but is had no money. There were times where she was homeless and she was living on a beach. And so Mia's dad grew up to say, no, I'm gonna have a good job and provide a home. And he went the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And Mia always kind of resented that until her dad passed away. And she realized after living with her grandmother that you can't sustain this kind of lifestyle. Yeah, it's fun while it lasts, but then where are you going to go home to? So she ends up, her dad died when she was 15, kind of taking care of her grandmother. And she went to college and she pays for her, has like a little trust for her grandmother because she knows her grandma can't manage her own money. And so she feels like she's been offered a promotion and she's going to take it, even though she knows it's going to be more hours, more time, but at least she'll have the stability.
Yeah.
And they make her go on a vacation. It's her 5-year anniversary. This is your bonus. You have to go on a vacation. So she does. She goes to an all-inclusive resort and she's thinking, okay, I'm going to have a fling. I'm going to have fun. This is my last week and then I'm going to be chained to my desk. And she's beginning to feel, because she's also turning 30. And I think anytime you turn 30 or 40 or 50, you have those big milestones. She's thinking, okay, this is it. Because
Yeah.
once I take this promotion, I, I am going to have so much more responsibility. And so she ends up wanting to have a fling, but realizing she's much more comfortable reading books because it's kind of out of her nature to like flirt and be wild and do things that she's not used to doing. So she ends up getting a book from the free table and
Yeah.
sees in the margins that somebody had written all these like weird clues, and there some of them are numbers and it's clearly financial stuff. And she's like, oh, what's going on, and why are you, who would write in a book, what monster would write in a book? And then she learns about a missing woman that went missing right before she arrived to the island, and she puts two and two together that it's the missing woman that wrote in this book. And so now she's trying to solve the mystery, what happened to her and what do these notes really mean.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was great. It was I I don't know if you, because I think I've heard that you're one of those organic readers where you don't plot. And so some of those clues that you had were pretty amazing for you to just kind of come up and wing it, through the organic
Well,
process. So
okay.
it was great.
One of the things is I did change. I had a completely different coding system when I first wrote the book on what she was reading. I ended
Yeah.
up changing it when I got to the end of the
Okay.
book and went through revisions. I said, okay, this is my first coding system was too easy. And then the second one I came up with was way too complex and made no sense, and so that someone would write in the margins on the fly, because that's what the author of the margin notes was doing. She was basically gossiping about people on the island, but she didn't write their names. So then the third time around, third time's the charm, I said, okay, this is how I'm going to refer to these people. So I did end up having to take notes when I was doing revisions so that I could keep it all straight.
All right.
And
Okay. All
yeah,
right. So
so
you
but I
are
did
human.
write it.
You're, yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
but I did write it originally
Yeah.
with a
Yeah. Yeah.
completely different code that it was funny because I kind of forgot what it was and I had to go back and reread and decipher it myself to figure out who was who.
That's good. That's great. That's great. Well, there was this one scene in this story where Mia was having breakfast with one of the locals, and it's the time when she ordered like the 5 crepes. And this is just kind of a fun aside for you, is she was talking about these crepes and how delicious these crepes were, and I got to thinking about crepes that I had tried just a couple of months previously for the first time. I'd never had crepes before, and it was like this banana walnut whipping cream, just delicious crepe, this dessert crepe. And so after that scene, I went down this rabbit hole. How do you make crepes? And I made my first crepe. Thank you, Allison. You
Awesome.
expanded my culinary repertoire. So I thought
Oh
that
my
was
gosh, they are so good. And
that's so
the thing is,
great.
the funny thing about it is they are very rich. So the
Yeah.
fact that she got 5 of them, I knew she wasn't going to be able to eat them all.
And I'm
I mean,
like,
you're
how
lucky if you could
big were
eat
these
2.
things? Yeah,
Yeah, you're
exactly.
lucky to be able to
Exactly.
eat 2.
Well, let's talk about Mia's yeah, Mia, right?
Yeah,
No. Is that
Mia.
right? Okay, I thought maybe I was getting her mixed up with another book I'm currently reading. Sorry about that. Let's talk about Mia's love interest, Jason. I love how you described him as this Irish-Mayan god. That was
Yeah, well,
great.
we all have fantasies.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Well, it was nice because it was I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I'm going to be very careful here. But he was like immediately drawn to her, which was an unusual thing for him. And as we learn, and so I really loved that they had that immediate connection. That's always fun with these romantic elements in books.
I think because I made a point early on that everybody on the island that worked there knows about the guests. I mean, the
Yeah,
guests, they know their names, they know their backgrounds, they have all this information about them. And one of the things that the island management prides themselves on is that they can anticipate their needs and that because they know the guests, even if they've never been there before.
yeah.
And that was kind of the way, and maybe it was a little subtle, but that Jason already knew her even before she ever got there. And I think he
See, I
was
didn't put
attracted.
that. Okay,
Yeah, it
okay.
might
I
have been a
didn't.
little bit too subtle, but I
No.
mentioned it multiple times
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there was one of those things that actually I will out myself on this. I was reading a CJ Box book, and I don't remember what the title was. I want to say Endangered, but I'm not 100% sure. But it was the one where his daughter Sheridan was working at a ranch that was catered to really, really, really wealthy people, and
Mm,
they would come there and ride horses and do all the ranch stuff that wealthy people, will go and do and spend a small fortune. And in it, they said there was they had like a questionnaire that the people had to fill out of like what their dietary restrictions are,
yeah.
what they like to do, what they didn't like to do, their background. It was like this one pager on all the guests. And that was, I think, in the back of my mind, even though I read that book like 10 years ago, I
Yeah.
said, oh, I remember when that was at that resort and that was a dude ranch. So now this is a resort. Oh, they need to know. They need to know everything
Yeah.
about the guests. And so that's why they knew her name, like even before they ever met her. Oh, hello, Miss Crawford. Hello,
Yeah.
and that was kind of my little hint.
No, I think that was just me because I recognize that in some of the other characters, because they were very in tune to but I remember now he knew her name before she actually told him. See, I missed that. That was me missing something there. So no, that was great. No, it was really,
I do
really
that when I
good.
read really fast too. I'll like
Yeah.
sometimes miss little things because I'm reading so fast.
Yeah, yeah, that's my life right now is reading fast. So I apologize about that. I don't you were spot on with that one. So one of the things that I like to dive into on the show is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's that second beating heart that tends to flow beneath the lover's journey. What undercurrent do you think is flowing beneath Mia and Jason's story, if you had to pick one?
Well, I think, God, that's a hard question. I don't
Mm.
know. I would probably ask you, what do you think it is? It was sort of like I remember once somebody asked me what the theme of my books were, and I'm like going,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like, well,
yeah.
you have a theme. And I said, no, I don't. Oh, yes, it is. And she told me what my theme was. I said, oh, that sounds good. But I I think for Mia, even though she has a couple really good friends and she's very close to her grandma, and she still feels disconnected from
Mm,
everyone. Um,
mhm.
Partly because of her need to be so responsible. I mean, not she is prides herself on being dependable.
Yeah.
And so at her core, she feels very lonely. And that's why she says she feels closer to the characters that she reads than she does to other people because she doesn't really have the time to cultivate those relationships.
Yeah.
She does have her two good friends from college, and but they also um, are very they help because they keep the threesome going. But now one is married and one is
Yeah.
engaged, and Mia really feels like she's going to be alone again. And
Hmm.
I think so. I think that's her undercurrent is she's scared of being alone, but she also doesn't know how to not be, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And she's risk averse, really, and he's
Oh
not.
yeah.
So I feel like he was teaching her how to really just to have fun, and just kind of, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah,
think
and she
that's
is.
great.
She's
Yeah.
definitely risk averse. She doesn't want to push the boundaries.
Mhm.
And it's kind of terrifying. I think a lot of people are scared to kind of push those boundaries. And then you have others that are saying, yeah, I'm going to go bungee jump off a bridge and it's going to be fun. It's like, why would you think that's fun? You could literally crash and die. I mean, I'm a little bit more like Mia there. I'm
Yeah,
definitely a little bit more risk adverse than I
yeah,
am like Jason. But Jason really does know how to live life. But at the same
yeah,
time, he um, is kind of in limbo. He knows how to have fun, but he also has a lot of responsibilities. And so he is trying to balance that
yeah,
by essentially kind of um, not, he doesn't want to acknowledge his
yeah.
responsibilities. So he kind of keeps them to himself.
Mhm.
And then, so all people see is what he wants them to see, which is, hey, I'm the fun loving bartender and I'm going to go take you hang gliding and I'm going to go take you up, oh, it's funny. A little digression. When I originally wrote the book, I wanted to have a hot air balloon. Um, and I had it mentioned. And then I did a little bit more research. I've never been to the Caribbean, but I did a little more research and I realized they don't do hot air balloons because you don't have a lot of control over. I mean, the
Oh.
islands are very small,
Yeah.
and going. So I couldn't find one island that actually had hot air balloon rides.
Yeah,
So, and I think it probably has to do a little bit with humidity and air
yeah.
currents and all that other kind of stuff I don't understand. So I had to take out hot air balloons. Um, but that was just the one because that's
Well,
what I
what
wanted them
what
to
you
do.
replaced it with was pretty fun because you could actually visualize, him coming. I don't know if we want to say or not, but you could
Well,
actually
at the very beginning,
visualize.
he
Yeah.
comes. Yeah, at the very beginning of the book, he hang glides, and I had a friend read the scene, and she goes, "I don't know if they could do that." I said, "Well, I watched a YouTube video, and the guy really did go like this in this
Yeah.
360. And now he was doing it in the mountains, and so maybe there's different air currents and stuff. But you know what? It's
Yeah.
fiction, and I was having fun with
Exactly,
it.
exactly. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know it's been a little while since you've, written, romance, and although you have romantic elements in yours, but um l- talk about tropes. I always like to ask about tropes on the show. Can you think of two or three tropes that readers can look forward to while reading this story?
It's funny because when I was writing this, I had a whole list. I wanted to actually this to be kind of a homage to romantic suspense and the best of the romantic tropes and the best of the mystery tropes. But because I focus so much on mystery, I had all the mystery tropes in there. Um, I think, secrets. Oh gosh, I don't know. There's a couple in there, but if I say what they are, then I'm going to give things
Yeah,
away. So I don't want to give them
yeah,
away. Obviously uh, the girl who wants the one last fling before a big
mm-hmm,
change. I know that's a trope. I don't know what it's called.
yeah,
The the friends that push her to go do things. I don't know
yeah,
if those are really
yeah.
tropes or not.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think those are good. I was thinking too, like fish out of water, maybe,
Oh, that's a
she's,
good one. I
yeah,
hadn't thought of
yeah.
that.
And the other one I thought about was maybe forced proximity, because they're on this resort and it's a small island, I think, and so they're all kind of together. So I thought
Yeah,
maybe
they're kind of
forced
trapped
proximity
there.
might, yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of people, but they can't easily leave.
Right, right, right. So, I always like to get recommendations from authors about a recent romance book, typically is what I ask about. But if you haven't read a romance recently, if there's other books that you would
Oh,
recommend
actually,
to
I
our
have.
audience. Okay, great.
Um, well, first of all, right now I'm listening to the Ex Girlfriend's Murder Club
Oh,
by I think Gloria Chow. I think that's the author's name. That might be the narrator's name. I can't remember. Oh my gosh, it is. I'm only like 5 chapters into it, and
yeah.
can't wait until I listen to audiobooks on my morning walk, and I cannot wait to get back to it. It is so good. And I don't know if there's going to be a romance in it, but it's really funny. But my
Yeah.
favorite romance that I read this year is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And I'm like
Okay.
going, oh my gosh, no wonder. everybody likes her.
Yeah.
Anytime you read a book that gets a lot of um,
Hype.
hype,
Yeah. Yeah.
either it's going to be absolutely amazing or it's going to be the worst book you ever read. So I always go into them very cautiously. Like,
Yeah.
one, I try not to read it when everybody else is reading it because I don't want to get sucked into, oh, this is awful or this is great.
Yeah.
So I think this book came out last year, and I don't remember why I got it. It might have been a discount on Audible or something. I don't remember. But I said, okay, oh, I know. My daughter's best friend was reading it when she came to visit for spring break. And so I was like, oh, I kept seeing that book. So I downloaded it. It was so good. It was a great romance. It
Yeah.
was also a great story. It was just the
Yeah.
characters were so believable, and you just ended up really rooting for them. And yeah, it was
What
really good. It was worth all
was
the
that
hype.
the was that the one where it was the city girl going into like a small town uh kind of country guy and then
No, it's a one about a
no?
travel nurse. She's a
Okay.
travel
Yeah.
nurse,
No.
and
Okay. All
she
right.
goes to this small town. And she does go to a small town, but in Minnesota. No, it might
Okay.
not be that small. And she's living on this island owned by one of the doctors that
Okay.
she's
I
works
haven't
for in
read
the
that one yet.
hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a
Okay.
lot about friendship. It's about she has a toxic mother, and uh, how she navigates that and
Okay.
her new relationship.
Great. Great. All right. I will put that recommendation in the show notes.
It's
Thank you very
really
much.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always enjoyed. I've read two or three of her books now, and have enjoyed all of them too. Reminds me a little bit of Allie Hazelwood. So if you've not read Allie Hazelwood, you might enjoy her as well. So hers is more
I will put her
STEM.
down.
Yeah, hers is more STEM, but it's that same kind of tone-ish, in there. So, um, so you have been writing for a long time, as you mentioned, almost 20 years. Uh, Writing, as we know, requires long hours at the keyboard. And I'm curious how you keep yourself healthy. Can you give us one thing that you do that keeps you healthy?
Well, I before my kids left, I have 5 kids. When they were young and in home at the home, I was in great shape because I was running around a lot. I would write, run around with them, usually sporting practices, games, all that kind of stuff. It was after actually they all graduated from high school, because my youngest is now 21, that that's when I and also menopause, gained a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And because I also wasn't as active and I wasn't
Yeah.
running around with my kids. So I have started walking every morning. I actually started it when we moved to Arizona in 2019. So I walk every morning, and that's the primary thing. And I think that just keeps me pretty healthy. I'm
Yeah.
probably the healthiest fat person out there because I
Oh,
had all my blood drawn and all my stuff. And it's like, yeah, well, yeah, you're 50 pounds overweight, but you know what? Your cholesterol's good, your heart's good, your
yeah.
this is good. It's like I said, okay, well, I
Yeah.
walk every day, and I was walking 5 miles, but I have arthritis in my knees, probably because I am
Yeah.
overweight. And so that's kind of cut down on the miles, but I try to do split it up so I could get not quite that many miles. It's that 5 miles for me is just over 10,000 steps. Um, Not quite that, but at least I'm getting close to it again.
And plus, you're probably experiencing 100-degree temperature at this time too, right?
Oh, it was
Good.
actually pouring rain 2 days ago,
Oh.
and my walk this morning was at 77 degrees. It was gorgeous.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, to be continued later this month, probably, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. It'll come, the heat
Yeah.
will come back. I also have a swimming pool, so in the summer I will
Oh,
do
nice.
my all my exercises in the pool, which is
Yeah.
low impact, which is great.
Great. All right. Wonderful. All right. Well, before we go, can you give us a hint about what's coming up next for you?
Well, I have the second book in the Angel Heart Investigation series that is called Don't Say a Word, that comes out in September. That is actually my official 50th book.
Uh,
And then I have the seventh Quinn and Costa book make it out alive that I just finished the revisions on and sent it to my editor last week, and that comes out in January. And then I'm writing the next Angel Heart book, which comes out a year from September. So,
Yeah. Oh my
and I
goodness.
also
Yeah.
just turned in my proposal for the eighth Quinn and Costa book. So hopefully I will, both of those books are due before the end of the year. So got to get
You
writing.
are amazing. You are absolutely amazing. It's incredible. All right, great. Well, I hope you do something fun to celebrate your 50th book. Book. That's quite an accomplishment, and yeah, I hope you take an opportunity to celebrate. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you.
So, folks, when this episode airs, Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds will be out, so be sure to order your copy today. You can check out Allison's website at AllisonBrennan.com. Allison, what social media platform are you most active on?
I go to Facebook every day
Okay.
and Instagram. Those are where I find
All
most
right.
of my readers reach out to me. So I spend most of my time there.
All right. And is your handle just at Allison Brennan, or do you have author in there or something like that?
Um, for Facebook, it's Allison Brennan, Facebook
Okay.
slash Allison Brennan. And for Instagram, because I got this before I realized it was going to be big for books, is AB Writes.
Okay. All
So
right. AB
that,
writes. All
and
right.
I can't get Allison Brennan. I already tried.
Oh shoot, yeah. Somebody nabbed it out from underneath you there. All
Yeah.
right, Allison. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I really loved this story. It was so much fun and had a great time chatting with you about and reconnecting with you. And I guess we'll see each other in a couple weeks here for Thriller Fest.
I
So that's
can't
going to be
wait.
fun. Can't wait either. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at tracydevlyn.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.